Welcome back to Life at the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli, and when it was April, it was Autism Awareness Month. And maybe you rode Marta during the month and heard some special messages. Maybe you're out in San Francisco and rode Bart. Maybe you're up in New Jersey and rode their mass transportation systems. The whole month of April, it was littered with great messages from kids on the spectrum. And it all was made possible by this man right here. Please welcome to the show, Jonathan Trichter. Hi, Jonathan. How you doing?
Hi, Gina. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Give me the backstory. What made you or inspired you to do these mass public transportation systems?
How much backstory do you want?
I want it all.
All right. So I had a semi-successful career in finance and some other industries, and my life was then personally touched by autism, and my career took a 90-degree turn. I started a small program for children on the spectrum. It turned into a medium-sized program, and then we opened up some more programs, and now I have schools for special needs kids on the spectrum, as well as agencies to provide therapies and services for the kiddos, special needs transportation services, and we're opening up more. It is now all that I do, pretty much. It's my whole life, and it will be for the rest of my life, and I've never been happier, and I love it. So that's the deep background. Now, if you know a lot of kids on the spectrum, you then are familiar with the phenomenon called perseveration. That's a medical term for high-intensity focus on usually things that neurotypical people would find asocial. This often includes systems of mechanical engineering that we interact with every day, and it often includes trains. So it's a phenomenon that's well familiar to frontline transit workers across the country and around the world.
Was it there just a couple months ago, there was the kid that was found, he was autistic and he had some elopement issues, got away from his mother and ended up on the train tracks, and it was the New York City public transportation system that found him and got him safely back inside that train.
I'm not familiar with that story, but it's not surprising. And every decade or so, even odder than that, you'll find a high-functioning young adult who's got these perseverative tendencies, dressing up as an MTA official, hijacking a train, and driving it around the boroughs. That's happened. It has absolutely happened. And it's usually a tabloid story, to much snickering and embarrassment for the MTA. We're talking here, though, in terms of this project and my interest in it, this phenomenon writ small through younger kids. As I mentioned, frontline transit workers are aware of this because they see these kids every day dragging their parents on joy rides to nowhere or asking them complex questions about the systems that stump them. And then neuroatypical children on the spectrum will often come to language differently than neurotypical persons, and they will grab on to phrases that they hear to try to start communicating with the outside world and their families and begin to socialize. And the phrases that they hear and remember are the ones where they're in spaces where they're focused. And as a result, it's not unusual for the first sentence of a child with autism who loves trains to have it be something like, "Stand clear of the closing doors, please," or some other public service announcement. So from there, and here's the long story short, it was a short leap from there for me to have the idea to approach last year the MTA, which is the mass transit system in New York City, to see if they would allow kids on the spectrum to record the public service announcements that they love and that they use to communicate for Autism Acceptance Month, and then play them publicly throughout the month of April.
And now this has actually grown from not just New York, but New Jersey out to San Francisco and Bart, and right here at home in Atlanta, Georgia on Marta. I love it. In fact, I remember seeing the news story on CBS about Emmanuel, who got on and did some of the recordings, and I loved it. I was like, how did I not know this? I would have gotten Lyric involved in this. How did they pick the children, Jonathan?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to also mention Emmanuel. That kid is blown up. He was on, I guess, local CBS. He was also on GMA, Good Morning America, and a bunch of other newscasts. You know, the media have a tendency to grab on to charming, charismatic kids whenever they cover anything, or charming, charismatic people. And he's risen to be a star throughout this project. He's a wonderful, sweet little boy. And his mother, Lisa, and I have become friends. And it's a great story through which Emmanuel, from what his mother tells me, has really come into his own even more and developed a sense of self-assurance and broken down barriers to socializing and communicating with people on the subway system, neurotypical people, and breaking out of his shell and becoming just self-assured and proud. And it's really nice to see with Emmanuel. And I think similar stories could be told, I hope. I've heard some similar stories. I hope that all 113 kids that participated in the project this year throughout the U.S. had similar experiences. That is my hope. Now, the question, however, was how did I find these kids, right? And as you may know, and others may immediately kind of intuit once I talk about it a little bit, not surprisingly, there are social media gathering places in major urban areas where special needs families who have kiddos on the spectrum will congregate to trade information about services, activities, schools, what have you. And I just found those in the different cities where we launched this project and ran it and posted, and then got responses lickety-split.
Excellent. And so what are the plans now for expansion? I mean, we've already got 5 to 6 major cities on board, and I think this can continue. I think they should run these messages year-round, but obviously during April and Autism Awareness Month, it really is key. But do we have plans to expand this maybe internationally, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's a good question. That was my goal. The project this year took off to an extent that I had not anticipated, and I had pretty high hopes for it, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
But yes, my objective was always next to take this to places with state-of-the-art mass transit systems, foreign countries, that nevertheless may have more mixed histories when it comes to including neurodiverse individuals into civic life. So I am very much hoping we can get this into places like Tokyo, Berlin, London, Paris, and I'm going to incorporate and form a nonprofit 501c3, raise money this year, hire an executive director to get some help to make that happen.
Yeah, some countries are better with the neurodiverse than others. I'm Gina, your host of Life with the Spectrum. Stay with me. I've got some questions about Jonathan's schools that he mentioned at the beginning of the show. Stay with me.
I'm Lear Gillenwaters. Thanks for checking out this episode of Life with the Spectrum. If you subscribe to the channel, you'll always see the newest episodes when they come out.
Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli. Jonathan Trichter, you came up with a brilliant idea to have our children on the spectrum record these great messages for April and Autism Awareness Month. And now that we're past that, I want to kind of go back to at the beginning of the show, you were mentioning the schools that you opened. One, not just in New York City, but also there's one in Connecticut. Care to share with our viewers? Because we have viewers from all over the country and all over the world watching today.
Yeah, so I opened up 2 special needs schools, one in New York City called the Foundry Learning Center, which is exclusively for kiddos on the spectrum. It's ages 5 to 12 to 14. We're going to try to go a little bit older. We've actually taken more space now. It is, I would argue, the best one-to-one ABA program, ABA Forward program in New York City, and New York City has a lot of good programs. There really is this kind of cluster of good schools for kids on the spectrum that provide therapeutic services as well as academic special needs instruction. So we started that school, and it's taken off. It's one-to-one, meaning there's a support staff with children every minute of every day so that they can access the therapies that they are legally entitled to and access academics without being dysregulated, staying regulated, staying focused. And that qualifies as an appropriate education for them. It's what they need. And that's the school in New York City. In Connecticut, we opened about a year later. It's more or less the same model. We're a little bit more diverse in terms of the kiddos. Maybe the majority of them are on the spectrum with a lot more comorbidities and some exotic genetic stuff also as well that you'll see here, which present a lot like autism and sort of benefit from the same therapies and the same special ed instruction. They're both beautiful facilities with state-of-the-art sensory gyms. We do ABA therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, special education, of course, some music, PE, and everything that you'd want in a great program. Our goal, and my goal when I launched these schools with my partner, was to be excellent, provide excellent services for the kids, and there's such a need. We thought that would attract students, clients and school districts for placements, and then increase the services and the quality to basically raise the level of what is available to these kids so that other programs raise their game.
So many schools that offer these types of programs and this type of education have a huge wait list. How are your schools with wait lists both in New York City and Connecticut?
We have wait lists both in New York City and Connecticut.
You do too. The need is all over.
Yes. We're a little bit better in terms of tapping that wait list because in my background in finance, I've hired hundreds of people through corporate restructuring and venture capital, startups, and I'm very good at hiring, better than most school-based professionals. So we hire better, we're better at recruitment, and we retain better. We're better at keeping our staff happy and supported so that they leave and that you don't have the disruptions of turnover. As a result, we're able to onboard students a little bit better than others, but it is still a struggle and challenge, and it is our biggest challenge. The children that need these services are available. Staffing is the biggest bottleneck, and we spend a lot of time to recruit good staff and keep them.
It takes a while to get somebody vetted and make sure they're in the right place and doing it for the right reasons, too. About how much is tuition at both the Foundry Learning Center and then the Hubbard Day School in Connecticut?
It's a lot, but it's covered by school districts.
Okay, what is the? You'll have to break that down for me, Jonathan, and our viewers, because here in Georgia, private pay schools are all tuition-based. Now, they can take some of the SB 10 money that their child was getting for special education services in public schools and move that money over, but the rest of it is private pay. So when you say it's covered by the school district, I'm hearing all kinds of people in Georgia want to move to New York City. Explain that.
Yeah, it's a little bit, the analog is not perfect for the different markets where we're in. Connecticut and New York have different ways of approaching the cost of the special needs tuitions that these kids ultimately cost. Let me take a step back though and explain that irrespective of the cost, the kids are entitled to the education that we provide and the educations that most special needs schools provide, irrespective of the cost. And that is because there is a federal law, as you know, called IDEA, which states can opt into, and they all do. And that law provides significant funding to the states from the federal government to cover the expansive costs of tuition for kids who cannot survive or succeed or even access an appropriate education in the general school district. And when that happens, when you see a kid like that, it's the school's responsibility, and I mean legal liability and responsibility, to make sure the kid does get a free and appropriate public education, even if that means outplacement. And oftentimes the cost of what qualifies as a free and appropriate public education for these kids is high, very high, because of the one-to-one support, for instance, that our school provides, plus those therapies, plus special education, and then plus all the other sundry costs, rent, other salaries, and health care, and everything else that any enterprise has got to put forth. So the cost is high, the needs of these kids are high, but they are absolutely legally entitled to a free and appropriate public education based on a law, federal law, that has been held up, refined, and evolved in a positive way, I would argue, over the course of 3 or 4 major Supreme Court decisions and multiple district court decisions. So these kids are absolutely entitled to these programs, and they are only there when the general school district cannot educate these kids. So let me also give you a punchline here. Our kids are severely impacted by their disabilities and by their neurological differences, right? We take kids with behaviors, kids that the school districts cannot handle. So without us, these kids would have no access to any appropriate education at all, for the most part.
When we get back with Jonathan Trichter, we're going to find out where you can find him, take a look at the schools, maybe schedule a shadow day if you're up in New York City or Connecticut, and also find out about next year's April and what that might look like for those messages. Stay with me.
Hi, I'm Lear Gilmars. Thanks to our friends at
Welcome back to Life with the Spectrum. I'm your host, Gina Cavalli. With me today, the lovely Jonathan Trichter. You have done such amazing things, and really recently in your career, pivoting, as so many people do, kind of that midlife. You went from finance now into the world of ASD with the 2 schools and these messages on mass public transportation systems. How can families find you, Jonathan? How can they find the Hubbard School? How can they find the Foundry? And how can, looking towards April of next year, find that their kids could possibly record some messages for you there too?
Yeah, so we're online. Check out our websites. There's contact interfaces on both of our websites. We're very responsive. We get back to people very quickly. The Foundry Learning Center is our school in New York City. It is absolutely and easily Googleable. The Hubbard Day School in Stamford, Connecticut, also online, Googleable. We are opening a school in the state of Washington called Emerald Learning, which will be online. By online, I mean actually functioning in July, we hope. That's our target date.
So is that school going to look like the model that you currently have at both Foundry and Hubbard?
Yes. It'll be a very, very comparable model. Exactly.
All right.
And then we are opening up some new programs in New York City and Connecticut for children who are a little bit higher functioning, who don't need the one-to-one supports, maybe a 6-to-1 classroom, kiddos with socio-emotional differences that need more psychological counseling. And those programs will be available as early as July as well. And I encourage all parents and families struggling on where to place kids in these catchment areas to reach out. I will respond to every inquiry, I promise.
And how can parents possibly kind of think, I know April is yet another year away, just about, how can we start thinking about maybe, because my son Lyric is a born entertainer, he must take after me, and he loves to talk, and he does commercials for me in my studio. I mean, he's so great. So I know parents are immediately going, well, I wish my son or daughter could do something like that. Is it to be on the lookout on those social media platforms?
Yeah, or stay in touch. Find me through Hubbard Day School or find me through the Foundry Learning Center, and I'll put you on our list and we'll reach out next year. Hopefully it'll be easier. We hope to expand to Chicago, Boston, and then, internationally we hope to be available to kids in places like Tokyo, Berlin, London, Paris, maybe even Israel.
I just love it, and I hope to run into Emmanuel here in the ATL because he certainly has a bright future ahead.
Me too. I would love to give that boy a hug in person.
Right. Well, thank you, Jonathan Trichter, so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it, and I wish you much luck in all of your endeavors up there in NYC.
Thank you, Gina.
Okay, moms and dads, so we definitely need to be online probably sometime in March so that our kids can record messages for Marta right here at home. Or if you're in San Francisco, your kid can record messages for the Bart. Or again, up in New Jersey, again, 5 major locations doing this on their mass transit systems, and hopefully next year it goes international. I love Jonathan Trichter and his message and his schools up in New York City and Connecticut. Make sure you're looking for those online if you have family members or friends up there that could really benefit from going to the Foundry Learning Center in New York City or the Hubbard Day School in Connecticut. Thanks so much again for checking out Life with the Spectrum. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe below. If there's somebody I need to be speaking to in the world of ASD, please let me know. Give me their information. Put it right here, and I'll connect with them and get them on a future episode. As we live this crazy journey called life, I do really appreciate you stopping in. Till next time, see ya.
Bye.